Mhm. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the delay. You know, technology can do its thing sometimes. But either way, I am so happy that you are here and welcome to Up Close and Culture with Dr. Say. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you have chosen to be here with us on KUAW Radio. That is knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And before we get to the things, I first want you guys to take a moment and like, comment, share, subscribe, follow us across all social media platforms. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, the Bird app, all up under the same KUAW radio. Again, that's knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. It is very important that you um, support it, share it, even just a likes are free. And it costs you nothing to do it. But what it does is it pushes our content through the algorithm so that we show up in those places and spaces where we need to be. So again, it is free. A like is free. Just hit the thumbs up, regardless of what program that you're on, to make sure that this wonderful content that comes to you 7 days a week gets pushed out to the community at large. So with that being said, we all are impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. That is through entertainment, music, politics, government, whatever the case may be, it affects us all. And it is important that we keep up with it. And that right there is why we're here today. We keep up with it up close and cultural the first and third Sundays on KUAW Radio. Um, Today has been quite a whirlwind. I am actually at an event right now, um, helping out with some Johnson County Democrats who are running for reelection and some who are just now showing up on the polls. It is election season everywhere around the metro area. You have people who are running for your, of course, we already know about the presidential race that is going on, which we are also going to talk about today. But there are a lot of people who feel as though their vote doesn't count, or they are concerned about their vote counting. And I would also advise you to check out your local elections, because even if you feel some type of way about the national elections, your local elections are where they start. I always reiterate that the people in the White House, on Capitol Hill, even just right here locally in Jeff City and Topeka, they came from somewhere. They did not just appear out of nowhere. These are people who are right from your neighborhoods. They're right from your local city. They're right from your towns. You've seen them on the school board, or you've seen them running in just your local elections, which you will have to partake in one way or another, because you not voting is the same as you voting for someone. You just don't have a choice as to who that person is when you don't exercise your right to vote. So with that being said, the national politics is definitely impacted by your local politics. Kansas City can just remember just a few years ago, you have two on both sides of the border. You have Mark Alford, who was, or Alford, however who pronounces his name. He was, I don't remember if he was the news broadcaster or if he was the weatherman, but he is a U.S. senator. Is he a senator or representative? Either way, he's in Washington right now, representing the state of Missouri. And if you look him up, and this is no slight to anyone who does not have, I would say, any formal education, because that's not what this is about. But what I will say is that Mark Alford does not. You can look him up. All of these profiles are public. Um, this is a gentleman who was on the news one day, and because of his beliefs surrounding the 2020 election, he ran for, and it is senator, he ran for senator for the state of Missouri. And he was the Missouri local state senator. He won his term, I believe it was just for 2 years. But after that, he ran for the U.S. senator position. So Mark Alford, who was your local news broadcaster, he doesn't even have a degree in journalism. But he was either the newscaster or, well, he would have to be the newscaster, because I do believe that to be a weatherman, you do actually have to be degreed to do that. But he's now the U.S. senator sitting in Washington, D.C., representing the state of Missouri. Then you also have Mike Thompson on the Kansas side. Now, I believe this is his second term, but he's not in DC, but he is in Topeka, and for the very same reasons, because of his beliefs surrounding the 2020 national election, he decided to run for office. And his popularity, being the weatherman, and he was the weatherman, he is now a state senator, a Kansas state senator in Topeka, representing interests of, I want to say, it's not Shawnee County. He lives in Shawnee. But I said all of that to just remind you that these are people that you saw on the news, not even famous people. Maybe they're famous to the local area, but these are people that you saw out at picnics, that you saw out, that you saw on the news. Regular people, regular folk, like you and I, the country people say. You have one who is now in DC, and you have one who is in Topeka. And again, I said that to say that your local elections matter. What is public information is how they voted on local issues such as school, education, book planning, or book banning, my apologies, healthcare, reproductive rights. All of those things are public information. You can literally log on to your state website and check out how your local senator, congressman, whether they're in the House of Representatives or they are in the Senate, and find out how they voted on the issues that matter to you. Because they take these same beliefs, they not only spread them throughout their local caucus, but they always have meetings and have a bearing on what happens to us nationally. So it is so imperative that you first understand the connection. And I keep drilling that home. I've been drilling that, I would say, for months now. I've been drilling that to people for months, because this thing about politics is that it can seem so big. It can seem so big and so far away. And I try to break it down so that people understand that it's really not. It is really not so big that it's beyond the grasp or the understanding of anyone. The things that you read in the newspaper, in the media, all of those things are written in a way that a third grader can understand it. And I don't know if that's the actual law or if that's actually just been the policy when it comes to journalism and broadcasting. But your basic news and your basic media, the things that are broadcasted out to the public, are written on a third grade level so that everyone can understand them. So all of this is just tying into what's going on today. I'm over here live on Twitter too. So if I keep looking over, I'm looking at my other social media platforms. But again, okay, well, we'll just get into this. So I'm sure you have heard, or for those of you who haven't heard, that President Joe Biden has decided that he's going to drop out of the presidential race. And I did post a letter that he wrote, and the statement. And, you know, I have my own thoughts about that, but I don't want to get bogged down into him dropping out and what's being said about it, because what needs to be said about it is how we go forward, because it's done. He's made a decision. People can make assumptions without reading the letter, but people can just make assumptions because they feel like it. At the end of the day, it's about how do we move forward, because there are maybe 100 days left in this cycle before we have the national election, and this is just a presidential campaign. November 5th is when we vote. So, point being, we have to talk about how we move forward. What happens now that you no longer throw in accusations of him having dementia, which there is not one medical report out that said that anyway. You have to get past the point of the age shaming, which I thought was just deplorable, but we'll talk about that on another day. But what I will say is that, because this is germane to the subject, regardless of what you thought, regardless of what medical condition you thought he had, you cannot deny the fact that his tenure in office as president is the reason why your insulin is affordable. It is the reason why some of you all's student loan debt was canceled. Some of mine was canceled. It just happened just a couple of months ago, and thank God it was able to be done before these AGs, the attorney generals on both sides, again, local elections, before they got their hands on it, because it is Andrew Bailey and Chris KUAW, and he's the AG in Kansas. They both went to, even as far as the Supreme Court, to block President Biden's efforts to cancel student loan debt, and also put out the misinformation about the cancellation of student debts being placed on citizens having to pay taxes in order to compensate for the student loan debt that's being forgiven. And that just is not true. And I'll say that again, the student loans that are being forgiven will not, and not one dime of your tax money has gone to pay for this. It just has not happened. Again, this is public information. We can do a show on that one day. But what is happening right now is that, as a part of the Democratic Party, we have to have the conversation about what happens next and leave all of those other conversations. In his letter, President Biden's letter, he did not endorse Kamala Harris, but he has since come out in another statement, which I am so happy that he made that statement separate from his statement regarding his dropping out of the election. He has since endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. And that's it, and that's all. This is where we are. This is what we have before us going into the DNC, Democratic National Convention. And there are going to be a lot of things that happen there. You're going to have delegates who are going to vote on who the nominee will be. if it's not going to be VP Kamala Harris, and then you have a superdelegates who will step in if there is not a consensus to that. Now, that is not written on a third grade level, but we could talk about that another time. But still, what remains is that we have to push this conversation forward. We have to get behind the people in office who are already in. Because to say that you support the Democratic Party, to say that you have a vice president in office who would have been the president of the United States had something, thankfully it did not, have not happened to President Biden, that she would have stepped in. That is the point of the vice president. You do not vote for the president and the vice president separately. You vote for them equally and at the same time, because that is also you saying that you have confidence that if something ever happens to the president, that this person steps in their place as president of the United States, along with just being that person who is second in command, that helpmate in their own VP duties as well. So my point is, when you voted for Joe Biden and you put your confidence in President Joe Biden, that means that you also put your confidence in Kamala Harris. If you do not support her as being the president of the United States, then that is saying that you did not support her or you don't have confidence in her now. And so what has all of this been about? And that is rhetorical, because that is just something that I want people to think about. And I want people to think about, before you open your mouth and you have conversations about things, I want you to look at how the right operates. I want, if you don't learn anything else, see how they have rallied behind this man for a third time. Even though this is his second time actually receiving the nomination. You know, he ran 3 times for president. But they have rallied behind him with his criminal record, with his criminal past, with his still denouncing, with his still saying that January 6th was a hoax, with his denial of crimes that he has been held accountable for, his denial still of crimes that in civil court, but maybe I should say civil penalties instead of crimes. With all of these things that he has been held accountable for, has been found guilty of in civil and in criminal court, all through our democracy and the laws that we hold here, the laws that he is supposed to uphold. However, he is running for office and saying that our democracy is false. To me, that is quite odd, that someone who believes that the democratic process is a farce, but you are running to be the representative and to head a country built on those same democratic values and still the democratic system. And yes, it does seem odd, but it is not surprising, which leads to the next part of this conversation. And we are going to definitely delve into this. I want to say, well, it will be sometime in August, because we're trying to find a place for yeah, because it's going to have to be done. This conversation about Project 25 is what I'm talking about. This is going to have to be a conversation that, and I might just cover the entire month of August, because Project 2025 is almost 900 pages. And I know I don't expect everybody to read it. Not at all. And it's a lot. I actually had to go through it twice, and then I had to do some other research to pull it all together. and listen to some videos and then do some more research. And I'm talking about research into the people who wrote it, research into the policies that they want to change. I had to then look and research how Project 2025 is already being implemented right now, especially in the state of Missouri. So let me back up. Project 2025 is, some call it a manifesto. It is this huge document that was written actually in 1978 by the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a group of, I would say, the powers that be, the main powers that be who are a part of the right. And it is their vision of how or what America should look like going forward. And I mean going forward from back then in 78, going forward past 2024. It's just that in 2025, and it's had other names, and we're going to get to that as well. And that, I will say, is a big part into tricking people as to, or to make people think that this isn't something that is happening right now. That this isn't something, or that Project 2025 is not something that is going to happen until 2025 by renaming it Project 2025. It has had other names. The nail in the coffin, and I do call it a coffin because Project 2025 is the death of democracy. It is the death of the government as we know it, not in a good way. Our system of government is not perfect. It certainly needs to change, and there are a lot of things that need to be improved upon. However, this Project 2025, the name it goes by now, is a system of a change in the federal system, in the education system, in every system in the U.S., and how it is going to dial us back to even freeze Jim Crow. I'll give you an example. There is one part in Project 2025 that wants to revamp the system of government employees. And it wants to, it's written where you have to be an expert. So right now, when it comes to the hierarchy of federal employees, you do have those people who work for the federal government. And then you have those people who work in the lower level, or the lower tiers of federal government. People that are in the upper tiers are your upper echelon employees. These are people who are degreed. These are people who hold office. These are people who are heads of companies that are subcontracted out to the federal government, whatever touches the federal government. Then you have those people that we may know now, or we call them civilian employees of the federal government. These are just going to be your lower level. And I'm not talking about people being lower level. People get all in the feelers. I'm talking about the position itself. Because if you know anything about federal employment, then you know that there are tiers, and that you have they number the tiers. Like you can be E1, E2, E3 on up. But what Project 2025 is going to do is pretty much eliminate it. And my screen is getting dark. Hold on a second. It is going to eliminate what I said, the lower tiers of government, or those governmental employees. And it is going to phase them out in a way. The language says that you have to be an expert in your field. And if you notice, just a few weeks ago, with the Chevron decision that was issued down from the Supreme Court, in a nutshell, it says that only federal judges, not any judge, but only federal judges, can decide what an expert is and what laws are constitutional or not. So it basically cuts out everything on the local level and everything on the state level as far as what is final. When it gets to this federal judge, they decide. And when they decide, that's it. That's it. That becomes the law of the land. So when you think about it, and I talked to you about how, or the credentials of those lower level employees, because you still have the upper echelon ones, they're going to stay in place because they are already considered experts. It's pretty much just going to, well, not pretty much, it is, it's going to phase out all of the lower levels of federal employment. And it's only going to put those people in, and this is written in the language, it is only going to put those people in that they, one, consider experts, and then two, who have pledged their allegiance. It literally says it. Who has pledged their allegiance to the person who is in office. So you not only have to be considered one of their experts, but they are not going to label you their expert until you become a sycophant, basically, and just decide that I am loyal to the President of the United States. And of course, Project 2025, being this writer's piece, then that person is going to be their nominee, who right now is Donald Trump. When it comes to that's just one part of it. And then you have the part where it comes to education. So education, and you see that now, is going to be privatized. And so there will be no such thing as public education. And the important part about getting all of these books banned is that if you don't realize that this was a part of the past, I would say, or if you don't understand that when they take away your ability to read, when they take away your ability or read for yourself, I would say, when you take away a person's ability to access information, then whatever you tell them becomes their scripture. Whatever you feed into them becomes who they are and what they know. That is the point of taking over education. That is the point of choosing what books are in schools. The scariest part about the books is that written into the language, it says that if they find books that have been banned in the library can be held accountable to the point where the librarians can be arrested. Teachers can be arrested if they find books that have been outlawed or banned, as they say, within their system. So those are just two. Those are just two examples, and it is quite disturbing. And if you do not, and again, I don't expect anybody to read it. I don't. Again, it's almost 900 pages, but it is something that we are, without a doubt, going to delve into. We're going to, my point and what I'm envisioning, and I have had a few people who already get on board with it, is to explain not only what it is and how it will impact you, us going forward, but how these things are already in play, how they are already in motion right now. And if you do not engage, if you do not have the conversations about things that you don't know, the things that you're curious about with other people so that you can be better informed about it, or if you decide that you get overwhelmed and just don't want to deal with it, then it's not going to be good. It is not going to be good for any of us. It's not going to be good for your children, especially if you have girls. Reproductive rights. They are attacking doctors along with the teachers as well. And this falls into the expert category that I was talking about a little while ago. There was so much information in there I just, and again, I don't want to talk about it right now. I just wanted to give you an introduction to it because it leads off from into so many different areas. And I don't want to miss a piece of it. And I want to do it justice because the point of me bringing it out is for everyone to get a full understanding of what it is. So I had to bring in some help and get people to help me do that. And I'm going to have someone from every system, from policing to government to education to the judicial system, so they can explain to you how, again, how it will affect us going forward, and then what that looks like for us in Kansas City and the metro area right now. And trust me, it's a lot. It is quite disturbing. Again, I looked at it, I read it twice, and it took me a couple of months to do it. And then I had to do research. And again, it was not a Google search. Google search is research, it's not research. But you have to ask questions and you have to get engaged because this is happening. It is happening. Again, that name, Project 2025, is very misleading. This is not something that is going to happen. These are systems that are already in play right now. And you need to be aware of it. Having the knowledge and what you decide to do with it is up to you, but it's important that you have the knowledge because you get engaged with it. So you have local elections that are happening right now, whether it is your local prosecutor, you have sheriff, you have judges whose seats are up for retention, you have judges who are just up for and even though this is the Kansas metro area, Kansas City metro area, they're two totally different governments, especially when it comes to the judiciary. In Kansas, we vote for our judges. We don't like what the judges do, then we show that at the polls. In Missouri, you vote for your judge one time. You don't even vote whether or not that person is chosen to be the judge. Because what happens is through the Missouri plan, which is what it's called, there is a commission in each county except the three major counties. I know St. Louis is one, Jackson County, and then you have Clay County. But what happens is the commission takes a group of applicants, which of course are all attorneys who are, and they apply for a judge seat. And then that commission interviews them, looks over all of the applications, and then from however many of that pool of people, maybe it may go through like 2 or 3 interviews, then it is narrowed down to one. That one committee. That's it, just that one committee. We haven't even gotten into you voting yet, because I see that on my Facebook. No, we haven't voted yet. This committee has nothing to do. This is a committee of judges, some entrepreneurs in the city, and 2 other attorneys, like 6 or 7 people. But I know the commissioner or the head of that commission is whoever is the presiding judge at the Court of Appeals in your local area. But that committee narrows it down to one person. I mean, that one committee narrows it down to 3 people. Those 3 people are then sent to Governor Parsons, who makes the decision as to who the judge will be. Okay. We have the commission again that narrows down all of this pool of applicants down to 3 people. Those 3 people are then sent to Governor Parsons. He is the one who makes the final decision. You have that judge, okay, who is then, when it's time for the other judge to leave, the person who's they're taking their place, that person gets on the bench and they serve their first term. After that term is up, that is when you step in and you vote. This is on the Missouri side, not the Kansas side. In Kansas, we vote, okay? So, and I'm talking about locally when it comes to Kansas. When it comes to the federal judges and the Court of Appeals, that's something different, even though we still vote this in a different way. But what happens is when that judge sits for their first term, then they go up for what's called a retention. In the retention vote, they are put on the ballot, and that is when the residents of Missouri have a say so in who or how they feel that judge has performed. That's the only time you vote, and it is a yes or no. And understand they don't have an opponent; it's just them. And if you think about whenever you have voted in Missouri, when you saw that judge or you saw that person on there, you probably just clicked yes just because and kept going. That is the only time that you get to vote now for that particular person. And mind you, you didn't even put that person there, the governor did that. After that, that is when that judge sits for an entire term or a full term. And what happens is that after that, again, that we will see that judge on the ballot, and that judge will just, it will just say, do you vote to retain this person in office? And it's just going to say yes or no. That's all you get. That's all you get. You get a yes or a no. And most times people just put yes.